In this video, I'm going to very briefly tell you why you might want to use a pinhole lens, and then I'm going to show you how to build this one that I'm holding right here. So a pinhole lens is basically the simplest kind of lens that you can put on any kind of camera. In our case, we're working with a large format pinhole lens that's sort of on a lens board. But basically, what separates a pinhole lens from any other lens is there's no glass. It's actually just a very tiny hole. You can see that little bit of light peeking through the hole in this pinhole lens that I'm holding in my hand here. And so basically, light travels in a straight line through the pinhole lens and creates an image exposed onto your film or your sensor from there. Oftentimes the pinhole is very small, which means that your exposure times are much greater, but it's still a really great way to get into photography. Let's say you want to do large format. It's a very affordable way to get started because you can skip spending a couple $100s on an actual lens with glass. This one in particular is the third version of the standard camera's pinhole lens that sort of accompanies the large format film cameras that we 3D print and sell. And what you'll see in this one that is different from the previous versions is it's completely metric hardware. And this is something we're working on doing both for this pinhole lens and then also the version 2 of the standard 4x5, which is coming out very soon, I promise. And so what you'll see is we have exclusively M3 hardware. I'm going to start showing you the face down camera here. And let's just jump right into this and start assembling this thing. So to build it, all you're going to need are the 3D printed parts, which there are 3. We have sort of the lens board, a front piece, and then a back piece. And you can purchase these files off of the Standard Camera's website so that you can make this yourself if you'd like. And then as far as hardware goes, you have 4 M3 8mm bolts. You have 2 M3 nuts. And then you have 2 M3 Nylon Lock Nuts. And then of course you have your pinhole lens. If you purchase an assembled or a kit version of this pinhole lens from us, the pinhole lens is actually laser drilled, and I'll give you a link directly to those laser drilled pinhole lenses if you are building your own, or if you want to do something. You can show this shop some love. They do a really good job. So I'll include a link to that below if you want to purchase pinholes directly from where we purchase them. So to get started, we're just going to take the sort of lens board of the assembly and we're going to flip it over. And you can see on the top and the bottom there are these 2 nut-shaped cavities. And we're going to take our 2 regular M3 nuts, not the lock nuts, and sort of pop these into position. And you have to apply a little bit of pressure, but now they're in there, they're not going to fall out or anything. And this is on purpose. These are sort of captive nuts, if you will. And that basically prevents them from rotating later, since they're going to be inaccessible once we complete the assembly. Next, we're going to take our pinhole lens here. I'm going to be very gentle with it. And basically place it on the back of our assembly here. And we're going to try and get it lined up. What I like to do is find the center of the 2 nuts and create a perfectly straight line between the 3. I'm going to have to verify that this is in the right position. So I'm going to take the back plate and I'm basically just going to drop it into position. And while applying a little bit of force, I'm going to pick this up off of my table and I'm going to look at it from the front. And you can kind of see the hole there. Hopefully it's pretty much perfect. If for whatever reason it wasn't, I would basically just take the back plate off and gently slide it around, put the back plate back on, and just check that everything looks okay. But this looks good. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to be careful to continue to apply pressure. And we have these 2, similar to the ones inside of the lens board on this back piece. We have these 2 cavities for 2 more nuts. And so we're going to put our nylon lock nuts in there. And you want to make sure that the nylon is facing out, not in. If you take a close look at these nylon lock nuts, there's a side that has nylon and there's a side that has threading. The nylon should be facing away from the lens board. And you basically just want to get these into these captive positions. It can be a little complicated, but we got it. And I'm going to hold these just in case they fall out. The fit should be just barely snug so that they're not going to fall out, but just to be safe, I'm going to put my finger over them. And I'm going to take one of my M3 bolts that we have here and just start threading it into the filaments of the 3D print. And then I'm going to finish it with my screwdriver. So you want these pretty tight, but not too tight. So once I feel some resistance, I'm just going to go about like a half or a quarter turn more. So this is nice and tight and in position. We can see it's contacting with the nylon, so it's not going to go anywhere. And then we're going to do the same thing with the other one on the other side. And that's it. Again, I did the same thing for both of these, got them just a little bit tight once I felt that resistance. You don't want to over tighten it, but you do want to make sure it's not going anywhere. But that is part of why we're using some lock nuts here, is these are going to prevent these from spinning back out on us. Now, you have your front piece, and if you take a look at the back side of it, you can see there are these two cavities, and that's actually going to coincide with the two bolts that are sticking out of the front of the assembly. And so you can see its degrees of freedom have been limited so that it can only slide side to side. Now we're going to sort of lock that in by using our other two bolts here on the top and the bottom. And these are going to be what holds your shutter in place. That's what this front piece of the assembly is. This is your shutter. You can see shutter open, shutter closed, open, closed. We're going to get both of these bolts put into place. And you're going to feel a similar thing. So the back piece actually is designed to function sort of like a little bit of a lock nut. So that this actually 3D printed piece is hopefully threading just a little bit with your bolt here and creating kind of a lock nut type situation. And then you want to just make sure that you can slide this. I've done just a hair too tight, so I'm going to loosen it just a bit. And that feels pretty good. It's stiff, so like if I tap on it, it's not going anywhere, but it's also loose enough that I can slide it. And this is how your pinhole lens is actually going to work. What you're going to do is when you're ready to make your photograph, you're going to have it in the closed position, right? So you can put your film in and remove the dark slide and so on and so forth. Open your shutter. You can see that little bit of light peeking through. Wait for your exposure to be complete. And then when you're done, you can close it again. And especially if you're using a quite small pinhole like this, your exposure times are going to be quite great. And so you shouldn't be too worried about having to touch the front of your camera for it to shake too much. Again, this is the third version Pinhole Mark III from Standard Cameras. If you want to purchase one, I'll put a link down in the description. And again, if you have questions about pinhole lenses or anything like that, you can ask down below. And happy shooting.